Now, when you're recording a podcast or a podcast series, you have a range of options open to you in terms of how to capture the sound, basically how to record all of the content. There's such a range. It ranges from very basic and inexpensive in terms of the setup and the equipment, right up to relatively complex and relatively expensive. But I'd be very, very careful about diving in too deep before you know exactly what you need in order to capture the particular type of content that you will have in your series. But also before you realize that you want this to have legs, to give it some longevity. Maybe you would just like to do 1 or 2 series and stop it there. But then if it's long term, you might decide to upgrade the equipment. So I'm a very big fan of not investing too much too soon. Okay, so maybe start basic if that suits you, and then build on that from there. Okay, so in this short video, I just want to take you through a few of the options, ranging from inexpensive and basic up to expensive and complex, that you have open to you in terms of recording your podcast and the equipment needed. So I'm going to start with what I would call the most basic setup, and that is the Zoom H1 Handy recorder. Now, there's a new model called the Zoom H1N, so if you're Googling this or if you're looking for it from Thomann.de or whatever website you want to buy it from or in shop, I would reckon ask for the Handy H1N. So this is an all-in-one. It's got sort of 2 left-right mics. It is, when would you use it? You would use it for very basic interviews, one-to-one interviews. So if you had one guest and you wanted to go to their office or their home and record a straightforward interview with them, well then this is a good piece of kit. It's broadcast quality, so you will often hear news reports on radio stations where this has been used to capture reports outside the Dáil or whatever that might be. So it's really, really good quality. So as I mentioned, perfect for one-to-one interviews. You could go to the person's house and leave it on the table between you at a certain distance and with the levels right so that you're picking up each other's sounds. Or of course, it can be handheld. So you're bringing it to your mouth when you're asking a question and then back over to your guest when they are answering the question. You could also take it out on the street if you wanted to record vox pops, if you wanted to get a range of opinion from people on the street and stop them and ask them their opinion on something related to your podcast topic. It's ideal for that as well. So I'm going to briefly talk about the pros and the cons of the H1 Handy or the Zoom H1N in a moment. But first of all, how do you use it? Well, it's very, very simple. It's designed to be simple. So basically, you've got an all-in-one recorder. You will turn it on by just simply sliding on the left here, and you'll see the interface coming up. It'll tell you how much recording time you have left, how much battery life you have left. You will also see the bars on the left, the LR bars going up and down. They're the levels, that's the input. That's really, really important because it's telling you how much sound the recorder is picking up. If it's too high, then it'll sound very blasted and very loud and it won't be pleasant on the ears. If it's too low, well, you're going to have to really boost it up in post-edit, and that can cause sort of an annoying hissy sound. So you want to be getting those bars up to around the -6 level or close to the 0 level. To record a track, you simply press the red record button. You'll see the numbers ticking up and down, how many seconds you've recorded for. You'll see the levels on the left. And you'll see the battery life. Always make sure you have a fresh battery when it's an important interview, because the last thing you want to happen is the battery running out. And believe me, it's the simple things that will always trip you up. When you've recorded your interview and you're happy with it, simply press the red record button again and you now have a track. You can listen back on this device as well. You've got a sort of a range of options in terms of playback, fast forward, all that kind of stuff. But you can also take out the micro SD card, pop it into your computer and take the file off that way, or you can get a USB cable and simply transfer it over that way. The really, really important thing to remember is when possible, when you're recording an interview, always plug your headphones in so that you're hearing the sound that is actually being recorded. That will help you stay on track. Okay, so the pros and the cons of the Zoom H1 Handy recorder, or the Zoom H1N. Well, first of all, it's very affordable. So this will be your basic setup, so to speak. It'll cost you around €100, and that's pretty much all in. Now you have your recorder. You're just going to have to pop a battery in there, and you are perfectly set up to record one-to-one interviews or people out on the street or whatever that might be. It is lightweight, so extremely portable, of course. Really good quality in terms of the voice, the voice pickup. So for voice interviews, this is broadcast quality, so you don't have to worry about anything from that perspective. And finally, it can be used as a plug-in mic to your laptop as well. So if you simply get a USB cable, plug one side into here, plug the other side into your computer, and select this as your external mic. Then, for Zoom interviews, for video calls, whatever that might be, you will be able to use this as your microphone instead of the microphone on the laptop. Invariably, this will be better and will sound better. So you can extract an extra bit of value that way. In terms of the cons, well, it limits you to one-to-one interviews. You can't sort of, do a wider setup in terms of leaving this in the middle and having 3 people around a table for a panel interview. You can do that, but you are going to have to sort of hold it and go round and everything like that, which is tiring on your arm. It's slightly awkward, and probably having to go around like this too much is going to distract you from your questions, from your content. You've got too much to think about, okay? What that also does is means that you're handling the mic quite a lot. And this is another con, I would say. It's quite sensitive to handling. So if I'm like this and I'm just going over to my next guest and I touch off the mic a little bit too much, or touch off the recorder, you're going to hear that. And it's going to be this annoying kind of handling sound that we're going to have when we listen back to the actual content. And the final con, I would say, is the fact that using this recorder, you cannot separate out the voice tracks. It sort of records an all-in mix for you, and that's all you can use. So what do I mean by that? Basically, if I have a two-person interview, I'm the presenter, you're the guest, and we are having a conversation. So I'm asking you a question, and you are taking the opportunity to loudly slurp from a cup of tea. Well, we don't necessarily want to keep that in. If I'm recording an interview with this, then it stays in. There's nothing we can do about it. But if I'm recording on 2 separate tracks, for that part where you're slurping your tea, I can just cut that out so nobody ever hears it. And then when I'm happy with everything by the end of that edit, I mix it all down and there's my mix. It's a mix that I have more control over. So I would say that's a big con. But again, very affordable, great piece of kit. So worth considering when you're starting out as that basic first setup. So next we're going to talk about the Zoom H5 digital recorder. This is from the same family as the Zoom H1N, the Zoom H1 Handy, but obviously is a couple of steps up. Why is it more expensive? What does it do that the Zoom H1 Handy or the Zoom H1N does not do? Well, first of all, what does it do in terms of the same thing? It does everything that the Zoom H1N does. It's a great field recorder, so you can take it out and about. It's very robust. The mic handling isn't so sensitive around it. So you could take it out to somebody's office, to somebody's home, pop it in the middle of on the table and record an interview between the two of you perfectly. You could take it out on the street and record people on the street. You could do anything like that. Atmos tracks, the sound of traffic, anything you want to do like that. It's very, very easy to use. So let's take a quick look. As you can see there at the front, we'll just slide it on to start it. Very similar look to the Zoom H1N. You'll see your levels, you'll see how much time you have left when you start recording. That's simply by just pressing that red button there. You can see the seconds tick up. Press stop in order to stop the track, and now you've created a track. You will very easily adjust the levels, and I really like this by just the dial on the top there. Just move it up or down. Again, levels are all about the amount of sound going in. If there's too much, it's blasted. If there's too little, you can hardly hear it, so you need to get it right. And what's really nice is some guests actually talk lower when they're saying something and talk louder when they're saying something else, or they're sort of being more enthusiastic about something. So it's nice that you can actually very quickly and simply adjust the levels to suit. I wouldn't recommend adjusting too much, but sometimes you have to. So it's very nice for that. But the beauty of the Zoom H5 is that you can start to add pieces to it, okay? So for example, you'll see here on the bottom, we have 2 inputs. These are called XLR inputs. And what that means is we can connect more professional, larger, and more powerful microphones into this, and it effectively becomes a little mini studio for all the world. So I could plug 2 mics into here if I want to have, at a time of social distancing, I might want to have, 2 meter separation between me and my guest. So popping it in the table in front of us is not necessarily going to be the ideal scenario, because we'll still be a bit far away and we'll pick up table sounds and echoes and stuff like that. So what I want to do is be able to have 2 mics, one for my guest, one for me, and use this as the recording device. As you can see here, I have a professional, really top-end recording microphone, professional microphone. It's the Shure SM7B costs around €350, an absolutely beautiful microphone. It's the Joe Rogan microphone. It's more commonly known as Joe Rogan, who is one of the top podcasts in the world. This is what he uses to record interviews between himself and his guests. So as you can see, it's an XLR connection, so I need a cable, an XLR cable, connect one end into the Shure SM7B, and I can just simply pop the other end into my Zoom H5, and now I'm connected. I could do the same again with another Shure SM7B or any other type of microphone, but it's nice to keep them similar. Pop it into this other output, and now what I've got is a perfect setup for a very professional recording sound when there's a little bit of distance between the two guests. Everything that's being spoken, everything that's being said is being recorded nicely into the Zoom H5, and I can edit that later. So that's perfect when you want to set up two external mics and use your Zoom HN as a way to record you and your guest speaking or whatever that might be. But what if you want to add more guests, more external mics? You want to share a panel of 3 guests and yourself presenting, and you want everyone to have their own XLR microphone. Well, that's where the Zoom H5 can also deliver. It's a fantastic piece of kit. So I'm going to show you how you do that. You're going to need an extra connection. So first of all, I'll show you. You just have to take the top off this. This is the inbuilt mic that comes along with it, but it's detachable. So we just take that off here, leave it there. And what I have here is an extra connection called the Zoom EXH6, which costs approximately €60–70. We'll pop that into the same place that we took off. And as you can see, it's given us 2 extra XLR outputs, okay? So now we can connect another microphone there, another microphone there, and another 2 here. And now you've got you plus 3 guests, panel discussion, and the Zoom is picking up all of that. So it's a really, really versatile piece of kit. And highly recommended. It costs approximately €250 to €300 depending on the time that you're looking at it. So I think it's very affordable for what it does. It can be used as a field microphone, but also, as you can see, you can plug in a number of XLR inputs. When you're putting 4 different microphones into the recorder, you're putting a lot of content in there. So you need to be really, really careful that you have an SD card with a really high capacity. It doesn't even have to be really high, maybe minimum 16 gigs, but nothing lower than that, because again, the last thing you want to do is run out of space when you're sharing a really interesting discussion and have to stop and clear the SD card and start again. It's not ideal. So again, no real cons, just watch out. Make sure you get a high capacity SD card to make sure you're capturing all the content in a nice linear fashion. So the next setup I wanted to show you is probably one of the kind of upper end of complexity and probably expense as well. So I wouldn't advise rushing into it until you know exactly what you need and going forward what you need in terms of capability for recording your podcast. So this is basically the audio interface setup, let's say. So just to break it down, I'm going to show you, we have again our Shure SM7B microphone, okay, with XLR input. Basically, this is an analog microphone. The sound coming out of it is in analog format, non-digital. We plug it into our audio interface, and we plug our audio interface into your laptop or your device. So basically, the audio interface is translating analog sound into digital sound. Okay, so why would you want to do that? Well, basically, we've talked about the Zoom H5 and how you can plug, up to 4 microphones into that and it'll record it. When you've got the recording, you take the sound off, you take the card out, pop it into your computer and start editing from there. The beauty of the audio interface is that you can connect up those same 4 mics. You've got full control over the volume, and so you can kind of mix on the fly to a certain extent or control them on the fly. But you can record everything that's happening. The full conversation, the full episode is going straight into your editing software and it's coming up on the channel. So again, just to break it down, instead of taking the sound card, popping it in onto your laptop, importing it into Audacity or Pro Tools or Adobe Audition and then editing, you are actually recording straight into your software, which gives you a little bit more extra control. You can be very clear about that the levels going in are correct, and there's a few more capabilities in terms of some of the software that comes with the audio interface that gives you control on the fly. Slightly more complex, but for that sort of upper end of professional recording, the sound is fantastic and the control you have is fantastic. So it works very simply, just like we plugged our XLR cable into our recorders. We just simply do the same. with the audio interface. So we pop it in like that. You can have up to 4 inputs, so up to 4 microphones. Here's your volume control and your input control, I should say. Pop your earphones in here and control your volume there. Then if we look to the back, you've got extra inputs and extra outputs. So if you're very paranoid like me and you're worried that your laptop is going to break down, you can plug your Zoom H5 into your audio interface and pick up what's going through there as well. So now if your laptop dies or gets robbed on the way home, you've got a backup recording. You can also plug extra line inputs, extra microphones, maybe something to play music in to mix through on another channel if you like as well. So basically this gives you way more capability of what you can do. But for a lot of podcasting setups, it might be overkill. So before you spend the money on this, just make sure you know exactly what you need. In terms of the cost of this setup, well, first of all, you've got the cost of the microphones, the analog microphones. The Shure SM7B costs in the region of €350, but there's so many microphones on the market in terms of XLR microphones, so you can spend anything from €50 all the way up to probably €10,000 on a microphone. The audio interface itself, this is the Focusrite Claret 4 pre-USB. This costs around €500 or so. And then you've got a few quid to spend on your cabling and just the ways to connect everything up. So this really is the next step up in terms of recording your podcast. It is more expensive. It is a little bit more complex. If you're running it yourself in terms of recording, you've got a little bit of work to do in terms of learning the setup and also monitoring it as the live recording is happening. But ultimately, it gives you way more capability, way more flexibility, way more control, and I would say an overall a better sound, a better quality sound, which of course is all important. And finally, I just wanted to show you a really good USB microphone as well. You may find yourself recording a lot of Zoom calls for your podcast. So obviously, if you can't get face-to-face with anyone at the moment or at any given time, you can set up the interview via Zoom or Skype or Teams or whatever platform you have. And I think it's really important in that case to have a very professional grade microphone instead of relying on the microphone on your laptop or whatever device you're using. So that's where a USB microphone comes in. The one I'm going to show you now is the Rode NT. This will be one of the industry standard ones, one of the highest rated ones in terms of reviews, etc. And it works so simply. We simply take one end, plug it into the microphone, take the other end, plug it into your laptop, go into your microphone settings and make sure this is chosen as the external mic, and suddenly anything that you are saying is now coming in through the Rode NT microphone at a much higher quality level than your standard inbuilt microphone will allow. This costs approximately €170. You can get a mini version of this for about €95, but of course, again, like with the XLR microphones, you can spend anything from €20 up to €2,000, no doubt, for a USB microphone. So again, in terms of setup, very, very simple to use. Obviously a lot more limiting in terms of what you can actually do with them. But if you think that you are going to be recording your podcast mostly over Zoom or mostly remote, then this is something to consider. So they are just some of the options that I would recommend that you look at when it comes to your recording process around your podcast. As you can see, there are many, many options ranging from very, very basic and inexpensive right up to quite complex and relatively expensive. And it's really a case of knowing before you invest what you are going to do, what you will need. So I'm a big fan of not over-investing until you know exactly what you need to invest in and what kind of equipment that you need. So I hope I've given you some good options, and we will discuss the rest. We can do a Q&A and discuss the equipment in more detail in our next session.